Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is Bloomberg Businessweek Daily, reporting from the magazine that helps global leaders stay ahead, with insight on the people, companies, and trends shaping today's complex economy. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. The Bloomberg Businessweek Daily podcast with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Bloomberg Businessweek Weekend podcast. This past week, NVIDIA became the first company to hit $4 trillion in market cap, cementing AI's rally and its status as a kingpin in the global financial market.
Okay, so that's sort of a microeconomic look.
Totally.
Even though NVIDIA is such a big company, we could call it sort of like a macro event.
True.
On the macro side, though, there was a lot because President Donald Trump fired off letters to over a dozen trading partners, threatening new and higher tariff rates they will face if they don't make a trade deal by the new deadline of August 1st.
To be fair, there was stuff happening with trade and tariffs as we were recording our broadcast and podcast. So highly recommend you head to the Bloomberg or Bloomberg.com for the latest and greatest when it comes to trade and tariffs. All right. On trade and tariffs, though, we talked to the CEO of Trex. It's a public company that's the largest manufacturer of wood alternative decking products. And the company's CEO joined us to talk about the impact of President Trump's extended trade deadline.
Meantime, the world's richest man tells one bullish Tesla analyst to shut up. That analyst opens up to us in just a moment.
All right. We also get into some other stuff that's going on. Amazon's robotic milestone that could one day replace humans in warehouses. Or maybe it's a case they're working side by side. We get into that. And then I got to say, in our second hour, we get to America's hot garbage problem. Bit of a disturbing story.
Also, the CEO of Brooklyn Sports and Entertainment, which owns the Brooklyn Nets and New York Liberty. All that to come. We begin with the analyst who this week got a short but clear message from Elon Musk. The analyst, Dan Ives, global head of technology research at Wedbush Securities.
Look, I mean, I knew Elon was not going to be happy, but the reality is, the board, they basically need to now step it up. And I think it's something where, I hear from shareholders around the world, right, on Tesla. And as one of the biggest supporters of Elon and Tesla, it was time to rip the Band-Aid off. You got to now put a new structure. And actually one of them, that we talked about in terms of the three things that we suggested is actually something Musk wants in terms of 25% voting rights. And what I view as will ultimately be an XAI merger potentially. But second, third, the political gambles and this sideshow, it can't continue.
Analysts seemed totally fine with Elon Musk. And correct me if I'm wrong, they seemed totally fine with him when he was getting along well with President Trump. And it seemed like the president's policies would favor his companies. Is that fair to say?
That's 100%. I mean, I viewed it as and we talked about it, the best thing that ever happened to Musk at that time was Trump getting into the White House. And obviously, you could argue Trump doesn't get into the White House if it's not for Musk. But like a lot of things, it took on a life of its own. Doge, BFFs, spending no time with Tesla, Mar-a-Lago, DC, Doge, the brand issues. That ultimately is why then Musk had to take a step back and basically leave the Trump administration. But in your wildest nightmare, no one expected, hey, let's triple down, start a third political party, where now Trump actually becomes a foe, Republican Party becomes a foe. And that just becomes more of an overhang for Tesla.
So the board as it exists now, is this the board that you think can bring about the necessary changes and set the ground rules as you are calling for Tesla? And Jack Hartung, who has been CFO of of Chipotle, excuse me. Kimball Reeve Musk is on it. Jim Murdoch, of course, Elon. Robin Denholm, an Australian business executive, former accountant, chair of the Tesla board. So I'm just trying to think, is this the board that you think can execute the changes that need to be done?
Well, they don't have a choice. Now, look, is this? What
do you mean they don't have a choice?
Because they don't have a choice where sometimes boards, look, if you go back to history of Tesla, let Elon does what he do. You can never argue a bet against him, and that's been the MO, right? That's been the DNA. The problem is that essentially the clock strikes midnight when now it comes to these political ventures and endeavors, as well as the time spent at Tesla. The board, you're not going to have a major change or makeup in a board that would take many years. The board now, as a public company, needs to, new pay package, we talked about in 25% voting shares, but then establish the guardrails because it's a public company and shareholders are demanding, and the stock reflects changes that need to be made.
The board certainly is part of it, but I think a bigger picture question that I have is an existential one about Tesla, Dan, and that's with regard to Chinese competition. And we've seen sales get hammered over the last year, and that really the narrative has been around Musk and his association with politics, whether we're talking about that in the US or about that in Europe. But what about the China factor? Does Tesla have what it takes to compete around the world with Chinese EVs?
They have what it takes with Musk. In other words, like Musk is the biggest asset for Tesla.
But they don't have the products, but they don't have products that compete at those price points and with that tech.
Yeah. So on that point, look, as someone spends time in China, like competition, BYD, NIO, Xpeng, everything we've seen, clearly it's become much more of a competitive market. I continue to view is that Tesla is still a gold standard globally when it comes to EVs. I think when it comes to China, look, the big game right now that they're trying to win, it's not necessarily about deliveries. It's about can they win the autonomous and robotics future. That is the way you get to 2 trillion, the way you get to $1 trillion incremental valuation because of autonomous is that way.
It's interesting that you say that because one of our producers, Sebastian Escobar, said, hey,
great.
Waymos are coming to my town where I live in, which is just across from Lower Manhattan. And I'm like, wait, what? And Waymo seem to be expanding pretty aggressively. And so it does seem like folks are going after what could be ultimately the future, right, of Tesla. If really autonomous works. I mean, that's where the growth comes, right, going forward for Tesla, in your view?
Sure, but to that point, like, look, Waymos are $200,000 cars. Like, you're essentially in 5-6 cities.
Yeah.
When you think about the scale and scope, Tesla, we're talking about 25 cities over the next year when it comes to robotaxi. I mean, that's the whole opportunity. Like when you think about 20% of what I view as like ride sharing over the next 4 or 5 years is going to be autonomous, no driver. So that's the opportunity that Tesla's going after. But then it goes back to politically, you can have Trump, Duffy, whoever else you want to talk about from administration, not as a friend, but as a foe when you go into the most important chapter of growth and success, what I view on the horizon for Tesla.
Has Elon reached out to you? Have you reached out to him?
I mean, I won't comment there. I would just say that, like, the message has definitely been received by Elon. It's been received by the board. And that was my goal, right? Like, my goal is that sometimes it's like tough love, right?
Yeah.
Like, the point is, like, it comes down to, like, if you don't reprimand or whatever, if you, like, it's like there's good times and bad times. But this is a time, and the stock reflects it, that the board, the adults in the room, whatever you want to talk about, they need to lay the guardrails out for Musk, especially around the political ambition. That is the key.
Dan, how does it feel to have Elon Musk tell you to, in all seriousness, what did it feel like to have him tell you to shut up on his platform? He's got, I don't even know how many followers he has. It has to be over 100 million, hundreds of millions at this point.
I think it's like 220 million.
220 million followers. How did that feel? I mean, I imagine too his sort of army came after you as well. Yeah,
but I don't, we know each other well. It's like, I don't worry about that. I mean, to me, I just actually view it more as like he has his right to an opinion. I disagree. I'm a huge supporter of him and Tesla, but I'm more focused on like it creating dialogue. Like he'll say "Shut up, Dan," and I have 100 memes sent to me about different "Shut up, Dan" stuff. And actually, a guy in the street yesterday yelled from New York City across the streets like "Shut up, Dan." So look,
Okay.
that's cool. But to me, it's about creating the dialogue because now it's like, okay, what is the community? What is share? I'm here from shareholders all day, right? That's the important thing, what it means for the Tesla story. That's the whole goal.
I wonder, has the board reached out to you and said, hey, thanks, Stan, for that?
Or members of the board?
Assist, yeah.
No, I mean, the good thing is, like, I definitely feel like this message has been received by the board. I think everyone's seen it. And at least now, look, now it comes down to like, okay, are there actions? Like, what does the board do with the next pay package? Remember, the other $56 billion pay package is still in the legal sort of limbo because of Delaware. Proxy still hasn't been, ultimately sent. That's been delayed. So this is a key period of time for the board, for Musk.
Another message that was received for the world of Elon Musk was from the CEO of X, Linda Yaccarino, stepping down as CEO after 2 years. Post on X, decided to step down as CEO. I'll be cheering you all as you continue to change the world. What's your view on that? How do we read that?
I think I have a very positive view of her, right?
Yeah.
Besides the fact that she's a Penn State, or we are, but
all right,
my
pull
view,
back. Let's
my view is she turned around X. She navigated massive political storm, right? I think very few people could have done. The advertising, I think a lot of it has rebounded. There's still obviously clear headwinds, but I think like this is like, look, it's huge shoes to fill. Like, it is a big hole, her leaving, because she has a unique background, because of advertising, because of her personality. I think she got along very well with Musk. So it is a huge, what I view as it's a negative, but now it comes down to like who fills that role.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Listen, we're so glad we could catch up with you.
Thanks for taking the time,
I'm so glad
Dan.
to be here.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
I'm so glad to be here and talk. And this is get the popcorn out. A lot of soap operas ahead.
Well, if you want to not be yelled at on the street, Dan, you're gonna have to tone down the wardrobe a little bit and go incognito, and not wear the signature Dan Ives clothes. I don't know if you need to go incognito, but I love it. We love it. Dan Ives, Global Head of Technology Research at Wedbush Securities, joining us from New York.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Businessweek Daily podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business App. Or watch us live on YouTube.
Well, if you've built a deck in the last few years, you probably know about Trex. The company makes composite decking from mostly recycled materials, including reclaimed wood and polyethylene film. Trex is publicly traded. It's got a market cap of about $6.1 billion. The stock's down around 17% so far this year. Like many companies in housing and home improvement, it has been a challenging first half of the year. Brian Fairbanks is with us. He's president and CEO of Trex. He joins us in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. Brian, welcome. How are you?
Thanks. Great to be here.
Well, welcome. Trex sells in more than 40 countries, so that's kind of where I want to start. How is the environment in the U.S. for your customers, for your potential customers, versus other parts of the world that you sell in?
The U.S. environment is still relatively strong. Most of our consumers are going to be family income of $100,000, $120,000 plus. And we've all talked for a long time about the bifurcation of that premium customer versus the entry-level customer. Because most of our customers are that 100 plus, we've continued to do well in the marketplace. This year we guided to 5 to 7% growth. We reiterated that guide just a couple of weeks ago. Our contractors generally have 6 to 8 week type backlogs at this point. And overall, we're pleased with what we're seeing in the market.
Where are most of the sales coming from? Is it people, homeowners who are putting in a deck for the first time, or are they remodeling, or are they just completely kind of, remodeling their backyard?
All of the above, but more often than not, it's going to be a consumer that's already experienced a wood deck. It's failed between 12 to 15 years, maybe 18 years on the long end of it. The quality of pressure-treated lumber is not what it used to be. So that decision and the payback period of putting in a Trex deck versus a wood deck is very different today. But we also put on a lot of new decks on new homes, as well as homes that are just looking for existing square footage. More difficult to move up to that larger home now. How do I add more space to entertain with your friends, family, and put a deck on the back of the house?
But isn't a deck built with Trex framed by pressure-treated wood under it anyway?
That's correct.
So is that an issue ever, where the wood that provides the framing, the structure, that doesn't last as long as the Trex?
That structure is going to be protected by the Trex, so it doesn't get nearly the same beating from a weather perspective or for chemicals, UV rays, things like that. So that structure tends to last quite a bit longer, whereas the decking itself is what's subject to the majority of the environmental conditions.
So what exactly is it made of? On the website, it says that it is made of mostly recycled materials, reclaimed wood, polyethylene film. What's the secret sauce?
At 95% recycled and reclaimed material. So the recycled piece of it is going to be the polyethylene films that we buy from all over the country and up into Canada. It's about 1,000-pound bale of film. We'll bring that in, we'll reprocess it, and then we also purchase wood, furniture, flooring manufacturers from some other sources as well too. Mix that together with the plastic. We extrude it into a deck board. We apply our proprietary shell on the board to give it its fade, stain, and scratch characteristics. And that's pretty much the way it's done. Buying recycled materials does give us a healthy cost advantage. We can be buying plastic anywhere between 5 cents and up to 30 cents for cleaner plastic. We still have to process it, so there's some additional cost added. Whereas virgin materials are going to be 60 to 70 cents per pound. You
mentioned buying some product, at least from Canada, the polyethylene film. The tariff situation, we've spent the whole day talking about clarity or lack thereof that we are getting, that CEOs and business owners are getting right now from Washington. How have tariffs affected you?
Well, there's a lack of clarity, that's for sure, for CEOs. We are primarily a U.S. manufacturing company. We've got 3 manufacturing sites, one in Virginia, one in Nevada, and then we're building a greenfield site in Little Rock, Arkansas that we're excited about. Today, we are recycling plastic in Little Rock, and then we're moving that to our other 2 plants to use there as we continue to build out that facility. Less than 5% of our cost of goods sold is going to be impacted by tariffs. And in looking at those tariffs, we look at how can we potentially source out of other countries, negotiating with those vendors, and then eventually taking pricing. We've taken a very conservative view of pricing of let's try to let tariffs settle out for where their endpoint is going to be rather than immediately reacting the day the announcements were made.
So Tim asked about the tariffs. I'm going to ask about the big, beautiful bill. We're going to hit you with the 2 main current events of the news cycle right now. Have you heard anything from the consumer about how this bill is going to impact their spending behavior?
It is too early. I think everybody's just beginning to digest everything that's actually in that bill. And so I've not really had any feedback from it as of yet. We haven't had a chance to poll our contractors or work further with our consumers, as well as all of those dealers, as well as retail channel locations.
I know you're 95% repair remodel based. So the housing market weakness that we've seen when it comes to new housing isn't necessarily. Can we do a through line from housing data to you, or is this all about, hey, somebody's been in a house, they want to put in a new deck, they're gonna use Trex? Is there anything that comes when you're talking about new housing demand and like people buying new homes that accompanies demand in Trex?
The only impact with the new home buying side of things is it does generate existing home sales. We've all seen existing home sales have been lower the past couple of years. That has driven repair and remodel spending, negative numbers the past couple of years. We've been able to well outgrow that. Mid-single digit growth for us, small single digit negative growth in repair and remodel. So we've been able to well outperform that. But it would be great to see the existing home sale side of things really pick up and drive that remodeling engine.
Do you work at all with the large developers of property or the large home builders like the Lennars or the KB Homes, for example, to use your materials?
We do. We've got agreements with the majority of the large home builders that are in the marketplace. So it is an important part of our business, but generally we're about 90 to 95% repair remodel, the remainder of that on new home.
You guys have a pretty large part of the market share, but that's not for a lack of competition. James Hardie just closed on its acquisition of AZEK, which is your largest competitor. How are you thinking about keeping that market share now that there's been a pretty big deal in the space?
It's a highly concentrated market. As you mentioned, we're about 50%, AZEK, TimberTech, roughly 30% of the marketplace. And they've always been a good competitor. And I think it makes both of us better having good competitors that are out there. We're not going to be ceding market share.
Back to tariffs, in terms of how the product is purchased outside of the U.S., retaliatory tariffs from other countries. Has that been an issue yet for you?
It has not been an issue. And that goes back to the fact that we're 95% U.S. source, U.S. manufactured.
But if you're U.S. sourced and U.S. manufactured, let's say you want to export the U.S. product.
Right. I see on the flip side of that.
Yeah, the flip side of that would be another country saying, wait a second, we don't want you to buy this product from the U.S. because we're entering this period of global trade that is more insular, where we're seeing sort of the world is not flat anymore. You know, it's been kind of a weird 25 years. Is that on your radar at all?
Our international sales are a small part of the overall company. Now, we do ship to 40 countries around the world. We've not heard any of that feedback as of yet. I think as we get further in the year and the tariff structure settles out to where it's going to end up being, I expect there'll be some additional discussions around that, and we'll hear more feedback from some of those countries.
How do you guys kind of deal with the rising commodities prices? I remember writing an article a couple years ago when lumber was just absolutely soaring. And I wrote about like wood alternative companies doing really well in the face of that. But I imagine that you do have to source some materials. And if inflation does persist, is that an issue?
Sure. Inflation absolutely hits our business. During the pandemic, we raised prices like many other building product makers. We also have a strong internal improvement program where we look at all of the costs that we can control and understand how can we take cost out of the business so that we can fund some of those cost increases internally. We know every year the cost of labor is going to go up. Certain commodity costs are going to go up along the way. How much of that can we fund by our own internal engineering, R&D efforts, and our own efficiency efforts? But sometimes we do have to take pricing to be able to cover those additional costs.
One of the big selling points of Trex is just how long it lasts. This idea of not having to replace a deck for 25 years, for example. That also means that when somebody purchases the product from you, they're probably not going to buy anything else from you. How do you build a part of the business that's like not necessarily services, but more ancillary products that are add-ons? Or how do you get that existing customer who knows about Trex to spend more money with you?
Right. That's an important point. Our warranties are anywhere from 25 up to 50 years. This product will last a long time. But the market size is such that there's 50 to 60 million decks in North America. Half of those decks are at or beyond their serviceable life. Today, composites account for about 25% of the volume of decking that's sold. So there is a large opportunity out there to go convert more of that wood business into Trex composite business.
Is new business still wood business? Like, are people still building wood decks?
People are still building wood decks, yes.
Why are they doing that when they're in that moment of truth where they're choosing their material? Why are they still going with wood?
A lot of it is because that's what they know, that's what they've done in the past. So the challenge for us is making sure that we're in front of that consumer while they're making that decision, showing them that we have products. In the case of the decking product, our Enhanced Basics is roughly 2 times the price of lumber. So for an extra $800, you can have a Trex surface on your deck. And prices go up from there. For an extra $500 on top of that, move up to our next line, our Trex Enhanced Naturals product line. So it's really important that our marketing engine gets in front of those consumers before they're making that final decision.
Social media. I've seen some of your social media content.
Oh, yeah. Trex TikTok. Is that what it is?
Well, it's other people on social media posting
active,
about their deck.
Oh, interesting. I haven't seen that. Hey,
yeah.
Brian, thanks for stopping by. It's been a couple of years. Do appreciate you taking the time. Brian Fairbanks, President and CEO of Trex, joining us here in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio.
This is the Bloomberg Businessweek Daily podcast. Listen live each weekday starting at 2 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business App. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Amazon held its annual Prime Day this past weekend. For the first time ever, it happened over a course of 4 days. Amazon betting the extension would give shoppers more time to navigate the millions of deals despite tariff-related price worries.
A bunch of robots lending a helping hand to get orders out to customers. In fact, Amazon marked a milestone earlier this month when it announced it's now using over 1 million robots in its warehouses. That's actually about the same number of human employees at the facilities. The news comes at a time when more tech companies are making job cuts and issuing automation warnings.
Ty Brady is the chief technologist for robotics at Amazon. He joined Matt Miller and me all the way from Tokyo, Japan. It was in the middle of the night when he spoke with us. But it was where that 1 millionth robot was deployed in a Japanese fulfillment warehouse.
It's an incredible achievement. I'm so proud of our team to be able to deploy more than 1 million robots to our global fleet. Our 1 millionth robot here in Tokyo, we actually deliver it to a fulfillment center in Chiba here in Japan, a great region for us for sure. And the way that we see it is it's really a force multiplier for both safety for our employees and also for the efficiencies, getting those goods right to our customer's door on time at a low cost, just in time for Prime Day.
So when we talk about robots, I don't think of the Roomba. I think of C-3PO, and that doesn't seem to be where we are quite yet. Certainly not in America, right? We don't have a bunch of humanoid androids running around. How far away is that, Ty?
Matt, you're speaking my love language, because when I think of robots, I actually think of R2-D2, not C-3PO, because I do want to remind you, who was in the back of the X-Wing fighter when Luke Skywalker had to go into the Death Star? That was R2-D2. And why I love R2-D2, and actually R2-D2 was the inspiration for my entire career. It's because R2-D2 helps a Jedi be more Jedi. And that's kind of the way that we view our robotics inside of Amazon. We see our robotics as an extension and amplification of what a person can do. Just like any great robot, it should be a tool centered around a person, right? So we put people at the center of the robotics universe. That's what we've done with 1 million robots that we've deployed out there, whether it's in mobility or manipulation. We are giving our frontline employees the right tool set in order to do their jobs more efficiently, and we're also creating more safety for them.
Ty, where's it all going? And I ask that if we're giving, increasingly you've got these robots, you've got AI, and all of this is assisting workers. Like, where's it all headed?
Yeah, it's I really do believe that we're pioneering the field of collaborative robotics. So as we continue to gain efficiencies, as we continue to create safety for our employees, we become more productive. That has clearly worked inside of Amazon and frankly for e-commerce, where we see that if you can build your robots in the right way, that amplifies human potential. And as a system that works with people, it's not people versus machines, but it's machines and people working together in order to do the job. We have really revolutionized that field. So what we have seen historically is the more robots that we have added, and this is now over 10 years plus since Amazon really got serious about robotics, we've created hundreds of thousands of new jobs, and we've also even created new job types. So where I see it going is that the onus is on us, roboticists, to build our machines in a way that is intuitive and natural for people to use, to build them with specific intent in the functions in order to help people do their jobs better. And my goal is to eliminate the menial, the mundane, and the repetitive. I aim to eliminate every single one of those tasks and allow people to think at a higher level and use the tool set in order to get the job done.
What kind of robots are helping you deal with, like Prime Day, for instance? It's coming up. I think July 8th is when it kicks off. massive shopping day for people around the world, but also for people in Amazon warehouses. I mean, do they have like an exoskeleton, like Tom Cruise in Edge of Tomorrow, or is it actually a humanoid that's running around picking up orders and putting them in boxes to ship out?
Yeah, we think of function first before form, right? So when you say humanoid, that's really the form base, but the functions that we really index on in robotics is the ability to move items from one side of the warehouse to another, or manipulate items, or store, or sort, or identify and pack those items. That's really what we do. So if you were to walk into one of our fulfillment centers, you would see these little drive units moving goods at will. Thousands and thousands of these drive units moving our pods to a person in order to pick out those items. You would see robotic arms picking up heavy packages. These are the repetitive jobs that I speak of before, picking up heavy packages and moving those into sortation systems. You would see sortation drives moving to the right and correct spot in order to bring it to the truck. You would see a cute little robot that we call Proteus, and that's safety certified around people that can move these large containers of goods to the right truck at the right time. So it's really the symphony of people and machines working together, which is really incredible to see. And it's a very practical, in a very practical manner. And that's something that I'm very proud of, because this application is really what's driving the fundamentals of robotics. It allows us to be adaptive and more modular, creating the safer environment for our employees, and also, frankly, gaining a lot of efficiencies.
Hey, Ty, it does look like, we were just showing some pictures out there for those who are watching us right now, and it does look like robots are increasingly becoming more, quote unquote, human-like in terms of standing up and having kind of appendages.
That's the form he doesn't want to talk about.
I know you don't, but I want to go to something. Times of London out. Andy Jassy, of course, your chief executive, sending a memo to staff in June saying he expected its corporate workforce would shrink as it rolls out AI. And this was the quote: "We will need fewer people doing some of the jobs that are being done today and more people doing other types of jobs in the next few years. We expect that this will reduce our total corporate workforce as we get efficiency gains from using AI extensively across the company." That's AI. But I do think about AI and robotics really increasingly merging. Replacing workers, how close are you guys to using more robots than humans in your warehouses?
Yeah, it's a great quote, first of all, and I do want to point out the difference between there's AI systems and there's physical AI systems, right? So you can think of an AI system as the digital chess that's in your computer, and you can play chess there. But physical AI is that you would want a system with a real chessboard in front of you where you're actually picking up the pieces and moving those pieces, right? So this physical instantiation. And what we have seen is when we build the right tool set for our employees, what we do is we really increase productivity for our employees. And what that does is that allows us to invest more in two key areas. We invest in better collaborative robotics, right? A better tool set for our employees to use. And we also invest in our people. All right, we have upskilled more than 700,000 of our employees. It's really important to be mindful of upskilling. It's important to realize that jobs will change over time. There's no doubt about that. And our aim is to give our employees, in particular our frontline employees, the best tool set possible for them to do their jobs.
So I love that upskilling figure. And it sounds like you guys are prioritizing, certainly making sure your employees, they can kind of move up or move on to where you guys have demand and where you need workers. But I do want to go back to, is there a point where you do have more robots than humans in your warehouses? And are you close?
Yeah, I'd just be careful about the correlation, because imagine if you were, let's just say that you're a carpenter, right? What I aim to do is give that carpenter the best tool set possible. I don't really count the number of tools that they would have, but instead I would actually index on the effectiveness of those tools. Are we allowing that carpenter to do their art and create or build the house in a shorter amount of time with even higher quality and create a safer environment? So, I mean, we could index on the numbers. We're proud of the numbers that we have for sure, because it represents some really pioneering work by the many women and men, scientists and engineers that have designed them. But remember, we also manufacture these, so we have manufacturing jobs. Remember, we support these in the field. We deploy these live in the field. And then, of course, we have our frontline operators that we're very, very thankful for. So it's a full ecosystem that when you it's really a force multiplier. When you do robotics right, when you do robotics that extends a person's capability to do their job, amplifies the human potential, then you really have changed the game. And that's why today's 1 million, it's a 1 million force multiplier for our employees, for the benefit of our employees, and also for the benefits of our customers, because we know that they love to have the world's largest selection of goods. Robotics helps with that. We can actually, as compared to our manual buildings, we can store more than 40% more goods in the same footprint. We know that it fuels a lower cost that we can pass along to our customer because of the efficiency gains inside of our entire fulfillment chain. And we know it fuels the fast delivery times that we know our customers love because we have the ability to pull any order really quickly and bring that the right good right to the customer's door. So robotics is helping spin that flywheel.
Carol has never gotten over Eric Brynjolfsson's book, Race Against the Machine. And so that's what she's asking about. You went to MIT, right? And so you know Brynjo.
Here's the thing. I think it's great if robotics, especially some of those tedious jobs, repetitive jobs, physical jobs, and then if you're upskilling to, people who are working now on creating the robots, I think it's a pretty cool thing.
I think, it's supposed to be dystopian, but I love the idea in WALL-E that we will eventually just float around in deck chairs on a cruise ship drinking ices while the robots do our work for us and get paid dividends. What do you think about that kind of future? And I especially wonder about cryptocurrencies being used, because machines will have to work with machines and transact. And this was the idea that we were kind of sold on at the birth of Bitcoin. But is there anything that's not science fiction to that idea?
Well, I could tell you what we're doing is definitely not science fiction. It's actually very practical and applied, and it's giving a great success to our employees, and it's also benefiting our customers very directly.
That was Ty Brady, Chief Technologist for Robotics over at Amazon. Matt Miller, also there. He'll be back in our next hour.
And I got to say, we want to have Ty back really soon. Tim, you will love this guy. He's so into robotics, but really understanding the science, the technology, and kind of where we're going with all of this.
But he's fully human. He's not part robot at all.
As far as I know. All right, that wraps up our first hour of the weekend edition of Bloomberg Business Week from Bloomberg Radio. Ahead in our next hour, U.S. landfills are heating to dangerous levels, spewing trash, juice, and toxic emissions, and it's making people sick. We'll explain.
Plus, building a new sports and entertainment empire with the parent of the Brooklyn Nets and New York Liberty.
This is Bloomberg Business Week. I'm Carol Massar.
And I'm Tim Stenovec.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Businessweek Daily podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business App. Or watch us live on YouTube.
Plenty ahead in our second hour of the weekend edition of Bloomberg Business Week, including how all those global tariffs, some in place, some to come maybe, are affecting one small business in the luxury space.
Plus, as sports team valuations rise, the corporate empires running them are thriving. On that, we check in with the CEO of Brooklyn Sports and Entertainment. It's the parent company of the Brooklyn Nets and New York Liberty.
First up this hour, addressing America's hot garbage problem. It was recently one of the most read stories on the Bloomberg and a Bloomberg Big Take. It explores one of the lesser-known environmental fiascos in the United States. We are talking about toxic landfills.
Bloomberg Businessweek writers Laura Bliss and Rachel Dottle reported and analyzed just how overheating waste below the surface of U.S. landfills is harming the environment and surrounding communities, which are left with little recourse. Laura joined Carol and Matt Miller, and she began by discussing one of the U.S.'s largest repositories of municipal waste, the Chiquita Canyon landfill in Los Angeles.
The landfill that you mentioned in LA County is a great example, and pockets of buried waste in this landfill have been rising to temperatures over 200 degrees for the past 3 years. That's about 40% higher than the EPA safety standard. California regulators suspect that what's causing this is too much oxygen getting into this landfill, which is a problem known to start fires. This goes against federal regulations. The landfill operator says that's not the case, says nothing is on fire. And as I found out, these landfills that have been overheating are a phenomenon that we've seen across the U.S. over the last 20 years. And there's real debate, there's real controversy, within the industry and between regulators about what's causing them and what to do about it.
Laura, first of all, I read your story, the first thing I read on the Bloomberg, and I could not put it down. And, I'm the type of reader who typically goes through the first 4 paragraphs. I'm from the Matt Winkler School of Bloomberg, and then I'm done. So fantastic job writing this. One question I did have is, isn't it pretty easy to determine whether something is on fire or not? I mean, it seems like you could gauge that pretty quickly.
You would think so. You would think so. And a challenge with these incidents is that, the temperature climbs, this is happening several feet below the surface of the landfill. And so you don't necessarily see smoke. You don't necessarily smell, what you might think of as a burning smell. These events can manifest in a lot of different ways. And it's because actually that you don't necessarily see those, classic fire symptoms that the industry is saying, well, this is not a fire. We think it's something else that's going on here. But as the story shows, and thank you so much for reading it, I mean, regardless of what we call it, residents are getting sick, and there's a lot of challenges in really addressing the problem and kind of getting to the root cause.
Exactly. What's crazy is people are getting caught up. Is it a fire? Is it not a fire? And there's all these terminology, subsurface oxidation, smoldering events. But it's an important distinction because you're right. The distinction isn't trivial. Federal regulations explicitly forbid operators from running landfills in a way that starts fires. Why is that so important, especially when you so clearly write that people who are living nearby, they and their families are getting pretty sick?
Absolutely. I mean, it's been, a well-known issue in the industry for years, that these fires can create really dangerous and toxic situations. And, among the, few regulations that are out there at the federal level for landfills, don't start a fire is absolutely one of them. And, one of the concerning things that I found is that one of the key rules that environmental engineers and safety advocates say, was really there to prevent fires was actually rolled back. And so, as far as what is there to do about it, that is something that a number of scientists highlighted for me, that we need the return of some of these rules, for example, to stop too much oxygen from getting in, because as we all know, right, that can start fires when you mix that with hot enough temperatures.
And the point is, it starts fires, but it also gives off really dangerous gases, right? And talk to us about what's happening to people who live nearby.
Yeah, I mean, so just to take the Chiquita Canyon landfill as an example, I mean, we see elevated levels of benzene, a known carcinogen, carbon monoxide, other toxic gases that are known, to cause the kind of respiratory, neurological, cardiovascular symptoms that people are reporting. Hand tremors, headaches, nosebleeds that won't end. People are having, cancer also, and wondering, is what's going on with the landfill having to do with my diagnosis?
So what can these people do about it? I mean, as I was reading your story, I had a feeling of frustration in my chest because it's so hard to prove causation, right? People are getting sick who don't live near the landfill also. And these corporations have seemingly endless pools of money for litigation. I think of Dark Waters. I think of Aaron Brockovich. Mm-hmm. What can the Houses, who is the couple that you write about in your lead, what can they do about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. There are I think over a dozen, mass torts moving through the legal system right now of residents trying to take legal action to represent themselves. Los Angeles County is also sued. This at the state regulatory level, there have been a lot of enforcement actions. And I think what a lot of these efforts are all kind of pushing for are funds, from the operator to fund the relocation of residents, right, to get out of this danger zone. And so I think that is what a lot of people are pushing for at this point. But there's also, I write about in the story, Pilar Schiavo, who's an assembly member in California, has a bill that's she's I think is awaiting a hearing in the state Senate that would basically just attach more penalties, right, to landfills in the future that exhibit these symptoms that cause these kinds of problems for people.
What do the companies say?
Well, just to reiterate, right, they say that this is not a fire. This is what they call an elevated temperature landfill, which is a term that, the industry has applied to at least 10, large landfills across the U.S. over the last 20 years that have exhibited similar symptoms. And, they pointed to, millions of dollars that they've spent in mitigating the problem, adding gas wells to trap the odors, putting a cover on top, contributing some money to residents to, buy air filters and things like that.
Why don't they just go in there with cranes and dump trucks and move it away? I mean, there is a temperature regulation, right? They're not allowed to be above a certain temperature, and you can just stick a thermometer in there and see that this does exceed that regulation.
It's true. It's absolutely true. I think the challenge is, what do you do when these kind of hot temperatures become this kind of runaway problem? And again, the question of causation, what to call it, like this all matters, right? Because that drives at the question of what do you do about it? And California regulators say you need to dig a fire break, which is actually not unlike what you're saying, right? You need to sort of create almost a trench, right, to stop this reaction from progressing. The operator says that would make things much worse. They say that the solution is to keep pulling heat out using these wells. So there's a lot of disagreement there.
Well, and I feel like it gets into a bigger problem in the United States, Laura, and that has to do with waste, right? Like, what do we do with it? If you can't, I think there's pushback against creating new waste facilities, right? Or waste or dumps, basically.
I wouldn't want it in my backyard.
Exactly. So then what you have to do is deal with the existing ones and just pile more and more stuff into it. I mean, as you note in your story, is that for a long time people burn garbage. We thought that was the way to do it. And then we realized, okay, that's not the way. I mean, in doing kind of also some, giving us a little bit of a history lesson in terms of dealing with garbage. I mean, this is again becoming another big problem, not only maybe potentially for the health of U.S. citizens, but also for the climate.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think this whole situation is a great and really alarming, picture of the problems that can arise, like when we just keep kind of piling our trash higher and deeper, right? And I mean, I will also add that, safety advocates will say, we're going to generate trash, right? We know that that trash is going to generate methane emissions. And that's kind of part of the story too, because trapping these emissions, you use these wells that can actually lead to more oxygen intrusion, which is known to start these fires. And so, advocates will say, like, we just need better monitoring, right? We need, better technology to monitor emission levels, real-time temperature monitoring, for example, so that, operators and regulators can take action more quickly instead of, letting problems kind of spiral.
Well, and as Carol and I were talking about this yesterday, one of the great things to do would be to stop generating as much waste. Right? I was over the weekend camping, looking for a spoon, and I went to a store and they had a box of 200 plastic ones if I wanted it, but that's part of the problem.
Yeah, like making things that you actually reuse.
You got to attack the problem at the root, right? Laura, I'm sure you've thought about this a lot.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny. Part of the way I celebrated publishing this story yesterday was taking the base of my dead electric toothbrush to a battery recycling facility, which even in the city of San Francisco was not that easy to find. But that's another issue of this too, right? We're not just generating more waste. We also have a lot more flammable waste, vapes, e-cigarettes, like these kinds of things. And so, figuring out the right, safest place to put it is important too.
Yeah, and you bring on the recycling experts too. They'll say, you think so much stuff is being recycled, but it's not necessarily the case.
Doesn't everybody now have a drawer full of dead vape batteries?
Not in my house.
No?
Right.
Not in my house. Laura, incredible story. Matt's right. We were talking about kind of the waste yesterday, and when he saw it this morning, he's like, oh my God, like this is what we've been talking about. It's a great deep dive, and we so appreciate you giving us some time with it. Laura Bliss, Bloomberg Businessweek editor and writer. Check it out. You can find it on the Bloomberg and at Bloomberg.com/businessweek.
This is the Bloomberg Businessweek Daily podcast. Listen live each weekday starting at 2 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business App. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Well, the WNBA, known as the W to fans, announced plans to expand to 18 teams by 2030, adding Philadelphia, Detroit, and Cleveland to the previously announced Portland and Toronto teams, which begin play next year. The expansion builds on several seasons of dramatic growth and comes at a time sports teams have been getting acquired for record-breaking and eye-popping amounts. So let's talk about sports and entertainment and hospitality. We've got Sam Zussman with us. He's CEO of Brooklyn Sports and Entertainment. It is the parent company of the NBA's Brooklyn Nets, the WNBA's New York Liberty, and their home arena, the Barclays Center. We're also joined by Randall Williams. He's a familiar voice and face to all of you. He's Bloomberg News Global Business of Sports reporter. Both of them join us here in the Bloomberg studio. Sam, I want to start with you. I think, the brand Brooklyn is something that you are leaning into big time here with the Brooklyn Nets. Also, of course, with the New York Liberty, with the Barclays Center. But I think people outside of New York might be surprised to find that the Barclays Center, basketball is a big part of it, but it's not the biggest part of it by any means. Sort of break down the share of what comes from basketball versus what comes from everything else that the Barclays Center does.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Tim. So Barclays Center is a real entertainment mecca. We are open roughly 190 nights a year. We do somewhere around 75 to 80 concerts a year. Brooklyn Nets games around in the 40s, Liberty games in the 20s. We are the third highest grossing arena in the world. And it's not just about the content, it's also about how we do it. Our goal at Brooklyn Sports and Entertainment is to create bold and unique experiences the Brooklyn way, meaning Brooklyn DNA, right? If you sort of think about what Brooklyn stands for globally, not just nationally, for creativity, for relentless hustle, for authenticity, for diversity. We represent about 150 different cultures. And so we want to make sure that when you come to an experience at Barclays Center, whether it's a concert or a game, you have a unique DNA, Brooklyn DNA-based experience that might be different from the experience you would have with the same game played at a different arena or the same concert played at a different arena. And we manifest that with food, with service, with ancillary entertainment, with how the venue is, and the fan experience, the audience experience is sort of first, and we manifest that.
So Sam, one of the things you mentioned was culture. And the reason I bring that up is because obviously New York City has a lot of it, but Madison Square Garden in particular has been open since 1968. The Barclays Center opened, I believe, in 2011 or 2012. You built culture in 15 years to become the third highest grossing stadium or arena in the world. What went into that?
So the work and the vision of a lot of people that came before me, but I would say it's focus first and foremost, but secondarily and maybe first is a lot of long-term thinking. So I consider us and the ownership group to be long-term builders. Everything that we do is with a long-term goal. We're focused on building generational fandom. We're focused on building the experience, the the service that we provide, the training that we put in, the selection of vendors, the selection of entertainment, the selection of concerts. If you look at Barclays Center, it is only, to your point, opened in 2012. It is only 13 years old, and we've already embarked on a set of arena renovations with over $150 million over 4 years. And we've opened several new clubs that you told me that
the Crown Club is my favorite. The Crown Club is my favorite.
Yeah, and look, Crown Club literally is first and unique in its experience. A chef restaurant with unparalleled wine list where people come in and they're having the time of their life. Before.
There's some people who don't even go to the game. They just go to the Crown Club and sit down there the entire time.
I think Randall needs to bring me to the Crown Club.
He's your guy, not me. He's your guy. Right there. A follow-up to the renovations. We're seeing this age of sports teams who have to renovate these stadiums, and the cost of that continues to go up. You guys obviously got out ahead of that. Why is that important to say, hey, we're going to put money into this, even though the stadium is less than 15 years old? There's a world where the Tsai family could have waited 20 years down the line and be like, okay, now's the time. But you're out ahead of this. Why is that?
It is because we're long-term thinkers, and it is because we're audience and fan focused, right? So just to give you an example, we have taken 2 levels of suites, and we've turned them over into bowl-facing clubs, where the reason we did that was not the utilization. The reason we did that is that we noticed that the consumption pattern and the preference of the audience has shifted. People like less to run from their seats to buy something and run back and miss the game and so on. There are folks who come in. Look, when you look at overall how you experience a concert or a game, it's an experience. It's entertainment. And so if you can offer somebody the opportunity to come into a club with several hundred people, to be able to eat, drink, take that food to your seat, watch the show or watch the game, go back and forth, be with your friends, entertain your clients, it's a very different experience than buying a ticket and sitting in a seat. And so what we've observed is this is the trend. This is what people want. We've done primary research. We spoke to people. And so we want to give that experience to people. And we have not invested, we're not doing this because things are getting old, because we want to give things a facelift. We're doing this because we want to satisfy the patterns of what we hear people are wanting. And we believe in the notion of keeping everything fresh, of being leaders in thought and entertainment, and we're putting our money, to work.
I want to talk about the growth of women's basketball and the WNBA. Randall had pointed out to Tim and I that the Liberty were ranked the second most valuable WNBA team, $450 million, at least by Sportico. Is it possible to get to 1 billion? And what would that look like? Talk about like how we've gotten here and where we're going.
I think it's not just possible. I think it's highly likely.
You think there's a race to get there?
Look, we're in sports. There's always a race, right? We don't, but I would say this. The race is to win another championship, to be a dynasty, to give fans a great experience, to have the best players, to take care of our players, and so on. That's what the race is, not to the valuation. You also don't dictate the valuation. The valuation comes because you do all these things right. But yes, I do think that it will happen. I think it is, famous last words, but it feels to me like it's straight down the fairway. When I joined the company 3 years ago, I have seen the average crowd go from 2,000
to... It was a much different time 3 years ago.
From 2,000 to a sellout.
Yep.
Wow. I have seen, I won't belabor all all the key performance indicators, but attendance, ticket prices, season ticket holders, sponsorships, every single metric has gone up tens of percentages a year. And when you are at the arena, it's palatable. A Liberty game is loud. It is a party. It is a fun experience. Everyone is invested, and there are some things that you could just see. You can feel.
We're speaking with Sam Zussman, CEO of Brooklyn Sports and Entertainment. Also joining us, Randall Williams, Bloomberg News Global Business of Sports reporter. Sam, how is the consumer doing right now based on ticket sales? Are you seeing any weakness, any lack of demand in different events due to concerns that the consumer has about parting with discretionary income? I mean, there's nothing essentially more discretionary than what we're talking about here.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're in the experience economy, right? Like when you think of people buying products and services, they do that in order to save time, in order to gain efficiency. For us, it's the opposite. For us, people are giving us their time and giving us their money in order to gain an experience. And so it's quite interesting. It's in good times that people want to do it, and it's actually in tough times that people want to do that as well. And so, look, I can't exactly measure the macro, but I can tell you in the micro, if we look at attendance in concerts, it is stronger than ever. If you look at attendance in Brooklyn Nets and New York Liberty games, we are in the high 90%. When you look at discretionary purchases of merchandise, of food and beverage, and so on, if you look at ticket prices, if I only had those to go by, I would tell you that the economy is doing great.
Sam, one of the things that both you and Emily mentioned was the growth of the WNBA. And I'm going to ask you about these CBA negotiations that are going on, and I don't know if you can answer that, but the players have said they want better salaries, better benefits, increased retirement, all of these things. We haven't heard much from the league. So from your vantage point, what do you think is a fair deal from both sides? Because, these CBA negotiations go on once every decade.
And we only have 20 seconds.
Yeah, well, I won't use that because that is actually a topic that I should refrain from. It's an active negotiation, and so I think we should let the professionals negotiate around the table.
Sure. A good place to end it. Sam Zussman, CEO of Brooklyn Sports and Entertainment. Randall Williams, Bloomberg News Global Business of Sports reporter. This is Business Week.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Businessweek Daily podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business App. Or watch us live on YouTube.
A recent most read story on the Bloomberg and at Bloomberg.com that caught our attention. It highlighted the struggles that some U.S. small business owners are facing due to volatile trade policies. It was about Robert Keeley, the owner of Keeley Electronics, who used his 1.83 million American Express reward points, almost 2 million, to pay an $11,000 tariff bill.
For some, it may feel like their only lifeline left. Small business owners often lack the cash reserves, lobbying muscle, or supply chain flexibility to absorb steep tariff hikes or pivot production.
One small U.S. business owner with a global supply chain is Steven Silver. He's chairman and CEO of the independent family-owned Steven Silver Fine Jewelry.
I think that the tariffs have put a lot of pressure on imports such as Swiss watches, and that's an interesting situation that they're having to deal with. We're having to deal with as a company that's supporting 21 independent Swiss watch brands. So navigating that's been pretty interesting. From the perspective of inventories that are held inside the United States, those inventories have gotten more valuable because the tariffs don't affect those. The interesting sidebar with regards to manufacturing, which is I think one of the major purposes of these tariffs, is as a trade, we bring in a lot of rough, a lot of cut gemstones, but they haven't made into anything yet. So tariff on those products coming in, we've never experienced before. So I think you may see an elevated price point jump. Whether the consumers are forced to absorb that or not is a different story. But unless little modifications are made to these tariffs to support U.S. manufacturing in this country with the loose goods that we bring in, you'll probably see some jewelry price increases.
10%, 20%, who knows?
Who knows? I mean, it really depends on how much the manufacturers are willing to absorb in the process of delivering the product to the public.
How much does it matter to you? I was in Le Mans in France a couple weeks ago, and I had the opportunity to sit down with Richard Mille, who makes,
great watches
and very expensive watches.
Right,
I mean, I don't know the exact prices, but we're talking about $300,000 wristwatches. Yep. And, for his clients, a 10% bump doesn't matter very much if they even have to raise the price that much.
Yeah, I mean, Richard Mille is a company that we started with when we first went into the independent watch business about 7 years ago. The way that these things will be acted or reacted to is about what the brand wants to absorb in the process of delivering product to its consumers. And
that's a very good point, because I'm guessing they have massive margins.
Yeah, they have margins. So to the degree that they want to eat into that, they will, in order to support their business and their consumers.
So tell us about your world. And I'm just curious about what you are seeing. I'm assuming you have, tell us about your typical client, if it's a gamut of, in terms of price points and what it is telling you about the consumer right now.
And you're dealing with also incredibly high-end stuff, right? Cashmere sapphires, pink diamonds, Richard Mille watches. So
well, not Richard Mille anymore. They went monobrand, and we were eliminated. But other brands on the level of Richard Mille are even finer. Some of the brands like Grubel Force and other important brands.
But you have 1 carat diamond rings. You have, multiple carats. So there is a range. So what are you seeing from the consumers?
As we discussed earlier, as we move up into the different levels of consumer activity, and we start getting into the ultra high end, attitude shift, reasons to buy shift. A lot of our ultra high net worth consumers are buying as storage of wealth. So that points to, product like ultra rare pink diamonds, blue diamonds, red diamonds, some of the unique rare historical pieces that we've dealt with over the years, like the Cullinan blue diamond necklace, which we donated to our National Gem Collection in 2010 that sits in the Smithsonian. Things like that, historical pieces that are really true collectibles and investments, or act like investments.
But did you see
the
anybody?
Pink Promise diamond. By the way, I love the Cullinan for me has even more significance because Rolls-Royce actually named their SUV after this diamond.
We were actually in discussions with them about when they were first coming out, or with the concept of the Cullinan. We sat down with them and we actually gave them a color chart of what the Cullinan blue diamond color was, and to see if they wanted to match the color of the paint of the Cullinan.
That would be insane.
We unfortunately didn't do it with them, but it was an interesting discussion to have with Rolls-Royce at that time.
What a cool brush with history.
It is.
I mean,
cool.
in 2 different ways.
Yeah.
Can I ask about the lab grown? Because to me, this is
you're fascinated.
Okay. Obviously, no one's replacing a Cullinan or a Pink Promise with a lab grown diamond. Right. But you point out that for a large swath of people, diamonds are more than jewelry. They're a store of wealth. I have a very wealthy friend who gave his wife a giant diamond, and she immediately got a fake made of it and put the real thing in a safety deposit box. Right. Because that's just how that set rolls, But for the normal people among us, like for me, I just want to get as much size as I can to put on my wife's finger, right? I don't care.
Yeah, I'm sure she appreciates it.
Yes. So how do you see this debate between lab grown and what I would have called blood diamonds, but I don't think that's fair anymore.
Well, the impact on our trade is still an evolution. The last time something this massive happened to our trade probably goes back to the time of Mikimoto inventing the technology to culture a pearl. Mm-hmm. And it really impacted the natural pearl market. This is a little different in the context of the ability to measure the market. It will define itself over time, I'm sure. But it looks like, to me anyway, that the trend is more of a mass market product that really impacts positively the average consumer, that spends $2,500 to maybe $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 to buy a piece of jewelry for an anniversary or a special occasion, instead of spending or financing that purchase at 20, 30 cents on the dollar, they can afford to just write a check and not get into debt in the process of buying that product. So I think for that market, it's probably a great tool, because the product looks like a natural stone. It's a synthetic diamond. It's a absolute match to what nature produces, but it's done in a laboratory. So,
but it won't hold any value.
Zero value at all, because the measure of value in our world is what the secondary market wants to buy that product back into the trade for. So if there's no support there, which there is not, then it's sort of the same thing as buying a t-shirt. Once you've used it, it's done. There's no value. The trade won't recognize it as a secondhand purchase with value. However, with the natural stone, it's a fully developed secondary market. Estate jewelry is bought and sold every day in massive volumes, along with metals. So the alternative, again, going back to the Mikimoto experience, is there is a market for Mikimoto cultured pearls or cultured pearls. Mm-hmm. But that's because they farm them. It's a farming process that does have the risk associated with not producing the product. So as a farming process, the trade recognizes a value, but it is definitely a different marketplace than the natural pearl market. It's massively different. Natural pearls in a big size can be worth millions of dollars as a pearl. And nothing even comes near to that with a single pearl in the cultured world.
I am curious, Stephen, because we talked with some folks in the high-end real estate, and that when there was the turmoil in the marketplace and we saw stocks sell off a lot, that people were pulling back from buying property. And these are even wealthy, like we talked to high-end real estate. Right. Did you see any kind of slowdown amid the market volatility?
Some.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Because we are also a wholesale business as well as a retail business. So we saw a lot of resistance slowdown in our wholesale side. With the ultra high end, they're very, very smart consumers, and where they see opportunity, they'll take it. And buying something that they don't need but want is a different thing. That understanding that their capital may be better suited for a dip in the market, they'll put money into that versus a luxury item like what we deal with. In the long haul, over a long period of time, these rare collectibles are very, very strong, though. They hold a very, very strong position, and resistance to volatility is part of that interesting charts that we develop and look at in our own world. What has a pink diamond done in the last 10 years?
What has it done in the last 10 years?
It's a pretty interesting chart.
What is
with
it?
Very, very little volatility. It depends on size, color, clarity,
right,
tone of color.
Yeah.
But the vivid pink category and intense pink category has been a very, very gradual increase over the last 20 years that has spun off amazing returns for people that buy them. And I believe, honestly, we'll consistently do that in the future because they're so rare.
Have you seen the Mrs. Bezos diamond?
I didn't. I did
okay.
not.
It's, I think, like 20, 30 carats. It's pretty wild.
I want to ask about watches because, on Wall Street, I think there may be some lack of creativity. So the guy that makes, his first 10 million is going to go out and buy something from AP or Patek Philippe, but not necessarily Grubel Forsey or MB&F. What are the most important indie brands right now? For those that really know, and I'm not one of those people, what are the ones that are sought after?
So this is a really interesting question because the what I call the independent stables, Richard Mille, AP, Rolex, those are your three dominant big boy brands that dominate the high-end luxury watch
Not
market.
Vacheron Constantin, Patek Philippe?
Vacheron, Patek is, of course, but Vacheron is probably number 5 or 6. I'm not sure off the top of my head what the top 10 are, but these that I've mentioned are certainly in the top 4. Then you have this sector called independents, but they're not usually big businesses doing big volume, but that's where the innovation is. And that's where you see the MB&F and this wonderful design and this really unique quality, the Global Force. These companies don't make a lot of watches. They may make 300 or 400 max.
Right.
But the innovation, the time, and the effort, the finishing on these watches is equal to or surpassing great cars that are incredibly rich cars, right? Very, very expensive cars. So that kind of engineering is the same kind of engineering that goes into these independent watch brands. That's where the innovation is. It also points to our client in Silicon Valley. This is a valley of innovation and has been for decades. So the
this is why we see like Mark Zuckerberg wearing the Global Force.
Only recently, right?
I mean,
it's his new thing.
You guys are in Menlo Park, and I'm just curious, what would you tell us about kind of Silicon Valley today in terms of based on the purchasing and what you're seeing?
Well, we started in 1980, so we've seen pretty much the entire evolution of the different technology companies that have evolved. They're certainly different today. They're much bigger, and they're much, they're as they
like. Do the AI guys like watches and expensive things as much as everybody else?
Absolutely. I mean, we've got 21 watch brands sitting at the Villa, which is our new home. We built a 36,000-foot building just to service the clientele that is our local clientele.
Who are the most famous? I mean, I'm sure you can't divulge the names of your clients, but...
You know how many NDAs I've signed? So don't go there.
No, I get that. But some of them are open about their hobby, right?
Yeah,
so we know Mark Zuckerberg now has a pretty decent stable of watches. Who are the most famous horological experts in, Silicon Valley or Hollywood?
And just got about 30, 40 seconds.
All right. Well, I can't say names, but I can tell you they're the leaders of some of the big tech companies that you're reporting on every day of the week. So, and also some of the most important venture capital guys have been clients of ours for 40, 50 years. So they love to buy watches.
Matt, you know that they do. You just need to look at the pictures.
I love it. But
Stephen, thank you so much. Thanks for coming by.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, a pleasure. Stephen Silver, Chairman and CEO.
By the way, I want to make a quick shout out to Uncharted.
Yeah.
They were amazing. Noah and Mike have done such an amazing job putting
I agree.
That was the event you did at the Hamptons.
It was
last
unbelievable.
Week,
And we hosted a dinner, by the way, for them on the West Coast before we did this.
We'll catch up soon. I agree. It was like a whole different slice of life, and it was fun to bring it to our Bloomberg audience. Stephen Silver, thank you so much.
This is the Bloomberg Businessweek Daily podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Listen live weekday afternoons from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern on Bloomberg.com, the iHeartRadio app, TuneIn, and the Bloomberg Business App. You can also watch us live every weekday on YouTube and always on the Bloomberg Terminal.